Hello everyone, I'm Mark Walker from AbilityNet. Welcome to Tech4Good Live, here on Thursday again, 4 o'clock. Back to find out some more about Tech4Good Awards, past winners. Got some sponsors here to talk to, some new awards that we're announcing, and some special guests in terms of finding out more about what you do to enter the awards, why to enter the awards, what you get for winning, and our latest updates on what we're doing in terms of this year's categories and so on. So welcome along. I'm glad to join us. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can put captions in place, and that could help you. So I recommend doing that now. And then we're going to get on with some interviews. So today we're going to be talking about three categories: the Arts and Culture Award, Education Award, and the Workplace Inclusion Award. Those are all new categories, although you'll discover they're themes that we've touched on before in the past, and we'll be meeting people who've been involved in entries before, and also some people who are sort of talking around the subjects to give you a bit more flavour about what we're looking for and the sorts of things that we think maybe will win this year. So the starting point for us, I met up yesterday with Janine, who's from iDiversity, who are sponsoring the Arts and Culture Award. So I'm going to play a recorded interview with her, and you'll see more about what the category is all about and also what we're expecting in terms of this year's entries. Hi Janine, thanks for joining us. Can you tell us a bit about what iDiversity does and the work that you're involved in at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So I very recently founded iDiversity Consulting. And essentially, we want to bring services and technology to help organisations be more inclusive, to engage with more people. Whether that's in the workplace or whether that's studying, we really want to help organisations bring down social barriers, get more ideas and collaborations, and build more of an inclusive culture. We're quite interested and knowledgeable on assistive technology, so we've definitely got a strong technology background, and because we have acquired eInsys Limited, who is a long established disability provider, we've got a lot of knowledge on working with people with a range of disabilities.
Cool. So can you tell me what you know about Tech4Good?
Yeah, absolutely. Back in 2011 I was the MD running eInsys Limited, and I won the Tech4Good Effective Partnership Award together with a major computer organisation. And we delivered this fantastic project where we fulfilled 9,000 computer solutions and assistive technology devices to low-income families with disabled children right across the UK in a very, very short amount of time. So it was an incredibly challenging and complex project to make live and deliver in just a matter of months. And each one of those solutions was unique to to help address the challenges of that disabled child. So it was a fantastically rewarding project to deliver, and we were really chuffed to win the Tech4Good Award. And I think it really helped us as a business, actually, because what it did is it created a really good case study. It raised the profile of assistive technology and how that can help people overcome challenges. And it helped us to talk to new customers and reassure them that we could deliver a major project like that because we're a small business, and helped us really grow the business. So I do definitely think that the Tech4Good Awards really do help you as a business to grow.
Fantastic. So I guess from that point of view, is a natural connection to you getting involved this year. You're involved in the Arts and Culture Award. Is there something in particular that sort of strikes a chord with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always had a passion for arts and culture myself. And also working with disabled individuals, we help a lot of dyslexic students and young people, and they often go into the creative industries. But when we think about arts and culture, if you think of a really great track of music that you've listened to or a really good film that you see, it just appeals to so many different types of people. And I feel that, if there's some technology where we could look at an approach of engaging with more people, making that more accessible, including more people. Then we're delivering the inclusion agenda, which I'm a really big fan of. So when I saw the Tech for Good Arts and Culture Award, I just thought, yeah, absolutely, really want to sponsor this award.
Great, thank you. And I guess looking ahead, this is a new award for us. We know that in the last couple of years, we've had some really interesting entries in other categories that might have won in this one. We had some glasses developed by the National Theatre last year for people to have captions running across their glasses. And we also last year, we had Digit Music that made a wheelchair joystick controlled music. Yes. So we know we're going to get some variety. Yeah. I wonder whether there's anything in particular you think we're going to see in terms of themes or types of entries that we're going to draw in, or that you're hoping to see.
I think that technology just moves on each and every year and enables us to do new things in new ways. I really would like to see how technology can engage more people, how it can help them to have a voice, to interact, to give feedback, to help innovate. Those are the sorts of things that really interest me.
Cool. Well, I mean, it's fantastic to have you along and on board, and thank you so much for your support. And obviously, you're going to have the difficult task as well of being a judge. Yes. I don't know yet whether you know what you've let yourself in for that, but we'll see if I know.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's really good fun, and it's great to have you. So thank you very much for your support.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So great. That's good to meet Janine yesterday, and as she said, I think what we're looking for in the Arts and Culture Award is very much, as we do across the Tech for Good categories generally, is looking around the subject. It's not just the technology, it's the impact it's having on people's lives, and in particular, I think around diversity and inclusion, which would always be a theme of anything we're doing in Tech for Good. And so I'm pleased to be joined now by Deborah Williams from the Creative Diversity Network, and John. Hi, John. Who's a judge and has lots of other roles as well around broadly the topic of Tech for Good, but is also a judge in this year's categories for Tech for Good Awards. So hello, both of you. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Hi.
Deborah, can I start with you? Can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about the Creative Diversity Network?
My name is Deborah Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Creative Diversity Network, which is a membership organisation for UK broadcasters, and we look at industry interventions around diversity across 6 protected characteristic groups, and in particular we manage a system called Diamond, which is the world's first online diversity monitoring platform. So we gather data on who makes television in the UK, who's on television in the UK, and what people think they see in terms of representation. Our membership is made up of the 5 main UK broadcasters, so Sky, BBC, ITV, Viacom, CBS, and Channel 4, alongside the production community, so PACT, the Production and Cinema Alliance, and BAFTA and ITN. So our tentacles go deep into the entire supply chain for television production.
And so what's the picture like in terms of diversity across those? I mean, that's a huge range. I mean, I'm guessing that you wouldn't exist if there wasn't a need for you to be doing some work in that area.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, we exist because over time it's become clear that lots of small, short-term, well-meaning interventions have taken place, but the big, large, the heavy lifting hasn't happened. So a lot of things have stayed exactly the same for years and years, and we've been monitoring now for 3 years. So 2016 was when we first started gathering data, and in February this year we published our 3rd report. And in terms of female, we're looking at about 50-50. That's in terms of on and off screen. That's okay. In terms of, we measure against UK demographics and workforce. But when you look at disability, you're looking at 4.9% on off screen and about 5% on screen. So, and when you think of the percentage of disabled people in the UK is, based on ONS is 18%, which is more than likely to go up and keep going up. You're looking at an enormous deficit at what television is doing, and also the side of that is people who are over 50 as well. It's an enormous amount of work that needs doing. Right.
And then in terms of tech and tech for good, is there a particular angle you think that tech is enabling to close that gap? As you say, it's a large gap. Is tech able to play a role in that, do you think?
I think it fundamentally, and not just in the production and creation, but also in content. Yesterday, We Will Not Be Removed happened online in terms of disability art, and a massive gathering of all of critical thinkers and leaders within disability arts. And I think the group is sort of like 250 people, individuals and organisations, and they used basically they used social media to get their voices heard, because we're not being heard. Disabled people in arts and culture are not necessarily being heard the way that their non-disabled counterparts are, whether that's around COVID at the moment, or whether that's around creating work, being supported for work, reasonable adjustments, and all of those things. So actually, at a basic level, having technology that you can work yourself, use yourself, make it fit you, that's a great starting point. Practically, in terms of where people look, we're streaming on YouTube and Facebook today, and YouTube has been a massive leveler in terms of anybody being, the idea is everybody's creative. It's just some people are seen and others aren't. But YouTube in particular has become a tool for people to really start going, this is me, this is my work, and driving their own identities and narratives, which is really important in the arts and culture world.
Cool, and that sort of empowerment and independent sort of nature of the technology is obviously critical then to hearing those voices. So, John, thank you for joining us. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the work that you do, and then we'll come back to Deborah and join the two things up in terms of looking ahead.
Well, thanks, Mark. Well, is my sound okay? I missed the sound.
Yes, good.
Cool. Well, I'm, I guess, what you might call a creative producer. I develop programs, get funds for them from various sources, including Arts Council England, and I work principally across the South Coast, but increasingly internationally, creating websites, creating activities, things like artist in residence programs, mainly almost exclusively around digital. And I guess the principal area of my cultural output is arts and heritage. And that's really been the focus of my own activity for the last 25, 30 years, working in digital, working in web, and working with Deborah once or twice, which was great. I also have another life, which is I work in the hardcore creative industries as a content strategist in the Middle East for a large ICT company. And so I create a constant outflow of web content and stories about technology and stuff. So I've got a foot in both camps here. I'm a creative and cultural activist. I'm a deaf person, and I'm a content strategist, and I work in industry. And I found my life quite polarized working in the hardcore creative industries. I've rarely found any workplaces or teams that use BSL. So I've always had to find my way through the morass of, Scrum methodology and startup spaces in quite an unfriendly place, really. And then back across in the arts, of course, we're very lucky in having a large number of people who are really into, are very much a part of the Diversity, Culture and Disability Arts Network and disability arts itself. So that's pretty much where I'm coming from. I'm a creative producer.
Cool. And you're also a judge. This is your fourth year, I think, as a judge, probably. I think. But you're well used to the sort of quality and the nature of the entries that we get. And I know that you've been an advocate for the Arts and Culture Award and helped us develop it. What's your sort of take on what you think Tech for Good in this sector would mean? What are the types of impacts that you're hoping that we're going to be seeing in this category this year?
Great question. I think Deborah and I both know that across the arts, and possibly also from a funder perspective, there's always been a strong interest in getting culture organisations and heritage organisations to really buy into accessibility. But at the same time, it's really important that artists and curators and writers are given the chance to be part of this, what we used to call 4 or 5 years ago mainstreaming. So people with an impairment of any sort sometimes in the past have tended to be wheeled on as a token participant in an arts and culture project. Now it's absolutely, for me, all about being part of the mainstream, being commissioned and being allowed to do what I want as a creative and not do something about disability. So from my point of view, what I'm kind of expecting to see in these arts and heritage award is, well, it might be cultural activity or historical activity, which it could be uncomfortable. It might be individual. It might actually be an individual piece by an individual artist, not a cultural organisation or a large, well-established museum. So I think we've got to begin to think, in the context of this award, what does it look like to be an individual in the arts and heritage space, using technology and digital, and doing that in a way which is personally empowering and creative. So it's not about being an artist creating disability culture. No. It's about being an artist creating culture. Yeah. So I think we've got to really think quite hard as judges what this award might end up with, and it's a very, very exciting space. I mean, there could be, you only have to look at the kind of culture being created at the moment because of the COVID lockdown. We're seeing things like fantastic online culture in Bristol. They basically started their own TV channel, and I'm not in any way suggesting that these are favourites, but we're seeing live stream culture, we're seeing individuals online, we're seeing a whole series of really quite complex cultural cross currents. One of the things that we've been aware of the last week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks is giving things a different name, decolonializing, and all of this kind of stuff. It's massively important. Technology can play a big part in that. So we need to be aware that this might not be a prize for a piece of work about disability. It could be something uncomfortable, it could be something incredibly compelling.
Yeah, sure. And equally, I guess the point to make is, although we're focusing on inclusion and accessibility as a particular theme, that may be a particular take on it. Once again, these categories are open in the broadest possible sense to all sorts of input, and you know, we're interested in some components of that, but that isn't a constraint within the category in the sense of the good could be other good as well. And I think that's what's interesting and exciting for us. We don't want to set a particular constraint on that. Deborah, in terms of the people in the networks that you work with and the sorts of goals that you set, are there obvious barriers to entering these sorts of awards? Are there things that we need to know in terms of making it attractive and interesting and feel effective for them?
I mean, I think, you know, John has said we've worked together, we work for a funder. And one of the big things that one of the biggest barriers is your criteria and your application process for a lot of people within networks that are historically excluded and then underrepresented and then probably sitting sort of in terms of economic inequality. So the idea that you can enter for free, that your criteria is really simple, those sorts of things are things that are barriers that are removed really quickly, that will enable, for example, for us to share that with our networks and go and be confident and comfortable that that we're not inducing barriers, and so that those sorts of things are really important. And to reflect on what John was just saying, I think to be quite explicit about how open and how broad you are, and the mindset, you're waiting for someone to bring you something, as opposed to going, we know what we want, and hoping somebody will guess what that is. It will make the right guess. So those sorts of things are usually are the usual barriers around awards.
Yeah. Well, I hope that we've been clear with that. And John, it has been. I'm grateful and for the support you've given us and the direction you've set, because I think this is a new area that we didn't have, and equally we've got our own sort of preferences in terms of sort of our interests around inclusion and accessibility, but of course there's loads of other bits to it as well, and I think that's the point. But as you say, Deborah, if we're not clear that we're being open and clear that we're actually encouraging applications across the piece, then often people can feel excluded before they even start. So I'm hoping we've got that message broadly right. We know that often new awards take a couple of years to establish, some sort of sense of priority or whatever. But equally, I'm hoping that through your networks and others that we're reaching out to the right sorts of communities who often may not have been reached out to. And I would say the Arts Council are involved. Unfortunately, Ben couldn't be here today, but we have got their support and we are promoting it through their networks as well. And so the Tech4Good Awards is often the sum of those networks. The more people can reach out, the more ways we reach out, the more actively we engage with people, I think. So it's great to hear your take on where we are now. And I guess looking ahead, we're hoping that we're going to have a really, really tough job in terms of the shortlisting and the judging, and get some great entries. As you say, we really don't want to predict what those may be, really. It's such an exciting time in terms of people changing the way they use technology, changing the sort of situation around them. So thanks very much for joining. And John in particular, obviously we'll see you on the judging panel. And Deborah, I'm hoping that in your network that we're going to see some entries that come through and that we're able to sort of reflect some of those lessons that we need to learn in terms of accessibility and inclusion in our finalists. So very much for joining us. Cool. Thanks very much. So that's one new award, quite different to things we've had before. We've had entries would have been eligible for the Arts and Culture Award in the past. I think this is the first time we're bringing them together. Our next category is the Education Award. This is something we've had in a couple of different guises, and this year it's called Education. We've had things to do with digital skills, which is obviously clearly related, and we've had an Education Award before. We brought it back in because I think it's a much broader umbrella than digital skills, and therefore we wanted to get a new fresh take on this. So I'm going to ask Christina and Charlotte to join us, and then I'm going to introduce them, and we're going to talk through where we're at with that. So hi Charlotte, I'll start with you. Could you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
I can. Thanks, Mark. I feel a bit unworthy in the presence of the last two speakers. So I come from the corporate world. My name is Charlotte West. I work for a company called Lenovo, a big global technology brand, and we operate in around 180 markets in the world. So huge diversity and rich as a big business. I think what's quite interesting is maybe bringing a spin here around, the kinds of companies that are involved with the Tech4Good Awards. So excited to be here. Thanks, Mark.
Great, thank you. And Christina, you're a past winner. Can you tell us a bit about your work?
Indeed, yeah. So I'm Christina Watson, Head of Business Development at UK Youth. So UK Youth is a leading national charity supporting young people across the UK. So we sit at the heart of a movement of about 5,500 youth organisations, together supporting about 1.6 million young people. And we're all about providing young people access to opportunities to develop skills, to build relationships with supportive adults in their lives, and generally, being that kind of support network for them. So yeah, that's who I am.
Cool. And can you tell us about your winning entry? Because there's lots to tell there, I know. So
yeah, certainly. So we won in what was then the digital skills category in 2018 for a project called Generation Code. And that was a project we were running in partnership with Microsoft, who are a long-standing partner of UK Youth. And this particular project was all about reaching young people who would be typically less likely to engage in computer science, and reaching them through the youth sector. And by that, I mean non-formal education settings and predominantly youth workers. So really identifying that for young people, for many young people, kind of school isn't the place that they may engage most. They may be less likely to engage there for a whole host of reasons. And actually the youth worker relationship and the community youth settings can be a really great place to engage young people who face a range of barriers and might be otherwise kind of turned off by other schemes and programs. So it was all about upskilling youth workers, inspiring them. We ran a roadshow of inspiration events across the UK. We partnered with people like Microbit Foundation, STEM Learning, to kind of bring in the tech sector with the youth sector and get them kind of working together. We used the Microbit and built a curriculum and a platform so that then by training youth workers and youth leaders, they could then take that knowledge back into their communities and run regular coding sessions in their settings, whatever that meant to them. They could, kind of choose the way that they did that. And the programme reached 20,000 young people over those 3 years that we ran it.
Fantastic. And I think also that's a great impact in terms of numbers, but equally the impact on the youth sector, I think, is a part of it, isn't it? The way that youth workers adopted the programme, clearly that was part of the change that you sort of instigated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us it's all about capacity building, and it was about saying that youth workers hold this unique role. They have incredible relationships with young people. They have access through to young people who are in some of our most deprived areas and experiencing multiple disadvantages. They understand how to engage with them, and so they're in a prime position. But what they don't always have is access to exciting technology and projects and resources, or the confidence to deliver that sort of work. If you think, I'm not a computer science teacher, or this thing seems really scary. So for us, it was all about making it really entry level. Often it was about the youth workers learning with the young people and making that okay, that they were exploring together. And yeah, absolutely, that kind of capacity building is something that obviously can sustain. So even though that particular part of the project isn't continuing anymore, we know that lots of the youth organisations that took part are still running coding sessions, and we're still linking them up to partners like Raspberry Pi to become code clubs. So it's all about that kind of sustainable legacy as well.
Fantastic. And I think it's worth mentioning, we're in the 10th year of the Tech4Good Awards. You've named several of our past winners there: Raspberry Pi, Code Club. This is a model that we're keen to promote through Tech4Good. So Charlotte, that obviously Christina's talking about a program that's national. You're an organisation with an international perspective. How do the two join together, do you think, in terms of Lenovo's interest in the broader picture of education?
It's really interesting, and I've heard Christina talk before about that project passionately, and she spoke about it even more passionately today. So it's fantastic to hear. And what about it is this idea that often the most we had most locally. So we might be a global brand, and I mentioned, the sort of scale of the company, but most of the work we do when it comes to focusing on STEM, which is our focus from a philanthropic point of view, is done very locally. So it reminded me of a project that we're doing in Barcelona at the moment with an organisation that focuses on coding classes for refugees. So it's exactly that point about taking it out of a formal classroom setting where most of those, not just children and adults, Spanish, they're new to Spain, so putting it in an environment where they can learn and where they're most comfortable. So I think for us, I don't want the fact that we're sponsoring an award and we're this big global brand to put anybody off, because we're still looking at those projects and those innovations that have real impact on real communities, and that's often done at the most local level. And sometimes those ideas can be scaled, or suddenly what becomes local can turn into a bit of rolling thunder, and be applicable in other markets around the world. So I think it's I think sometimes the most exciting and innovative ones are done when you can think of the real people and you can see the faces of the people that it impacts. So I think that's it's great.
Yeah, no, I like that description, and I think from the Tech4Good Awards point of view, again, we've got that. I remember in the first year that we ran, there was a chip shop in Stockport, in a shopping centre in Stockport, that was an incredible model for all sorts of ways of engaging with people with digital skills in mind. In that case, and as you say, that I think the next scale up, I'm interested from a national point of view, Christina. Presumably those models are being rolled out. They become blueprints for further work. They get adopted within mainstream practice for youth workers and so on. I guess that's the connections we're trying to make, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, a really vital role for organisations like us is to, do these programmes because hopefully they have impact in the moment, but to absolutely take the learnings from them and look at how we can embed that across the thousands of other youth organisations that might not have been able to take part in that particular programme or that cycle of funding. And actually the continual evolution, I'd say one of the things that we really benefited from as a staff kind of project team at UK Youth, working with people like Microsoft and Microbit, and actually some of the Tech4Good kind of entrepreneurs that we met through the awards, was us kind of adopting approaches like design thinking and rapid prototyping and things that you don't often see in the charity sector, because we had the opportunity to work in partnership with them. And then we've been able to evolve the programme. So the Generation Code in its current form is we're still partnered with Microsoft, but we've now moved to an accelerator model for youth workers. Again, something that might be more, you might see more in the tech sector than you would in the charity sector. And so I feel like we've been able to actually learn kind of in that way and be more innovative, and that's hopefully going to kind of bring the charity sector up to the kind of the modern day as well.
And you mentioned some of the changes are in the midst of it. In terms of the next big step and the work that you're doing now, what's the next horizon look like? What's your goal for change?
Sure.
What we're doing?
I mean, evolving every week at the moment, as I'm sure everybody's is, as we adapt. I mean, as I mentioned, the accelerator, we're in the middle of that next cycle of programs. So that's been all about kind of bringing on youth organisations as accelerator hubs and really empowering them to solve problems in their community and in their service with technology. So us not defining what the issue is, us not just focusing on one particular digital skill that we want them to impart, but actually getting them to have conversations with their young people and to use things like the design thinking approach to come up with ways they can better use tech in their spaces. So that's been that's kind of ongoing. And of course, COVID coming in has brought in some huge challenges, but some huge opportunities. In terms of digital youth work is a big thing that we're looking at the moment. A lot of youth services obviously have been adapting to support young people during this time, some of the most vulnerable young people. And we've seen digital youth clubs pop up and all sorts of incredible uses of tech in the last few months. So we're really looking at how we can support that, how we can be a conduit to get devices out to those who need it most and work in the digital inclusion space. And we're really in responding mode at the moment, I would say.
Yeah, cool. And I'm guess that there is an obvious gap there between the formal education system and what it's able to provide. I mean, not just in this country, clearly, everywhere. The need to look at what that gap is, and also, as you mentioned, the impact of disadvantage on anybody's ability to maintain that connection with the education system at school age or any other age, I guess. So that's one mention of COVID. I mean, Charlotte, have you got any other suggestions for where COVID may pop up, or are we going to be inundated with ideas, do you think?
I think what's really interesting, and just listening to Christina speaking there, is it made me think that on the one hand, technology has, since COVID really hit, probably in the UK, which would have been end of March, wouldn't it, in terms of how it sort of changed our lives overnight. In a way, technology has democratized access to everything because everyone's in the same situation. We've all got to, try and battle through our lives, whether it be through online learning, for homeschooling for kids, which anybody else on the cause is quite painful sometimes, to, coping with, putting on something like this today, Mark, or, just doing our, coping in our day-to-day lives. So in a way, the technology has been this great enabler and great democratizer of everything. But on the other hand, there's this now, maybe the gap is becoming much bigger because, I'm fortunate to sit here. I work for a technology company. I've got a great big screen, a camera, a laptop, a keyboard, a nice view, another speaker, a phone. I've got access to all of the technology that I want. Because I'm fortunate in the job that I work for to have that. And that's not always the case. And I think that through the STEM work that we've done, maybe, in the past, it's more important now than ever that we look at those marginalised communities, whether it be marginalised based on ability or ethnicity or, socioeconomic situation or whatever it is, that we have to look at making sure that we use this moment in time of COVID to make, as the awards say, tech be something for good, not something that widens the gap for everyone. So I think for the Education Award, I can't see how COVID can't impact the entries in a way, because if it's the thing that has changed so fundamentally for everyone. So yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. Having not seen any awards entries in the past, I think I'm sort of starting this in a fortunate year in a way to see how a life-changing or world-changing event can, be brought through in these award entries, essentially.
Yes, and Christina, just one final mention. I mean, in terms of the impact of winning the award, is there anything in particular you would say to anyone thinking of entering and the benefits that it brings?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think something that really struck me was kind of the amount of touch points and kind of almost airtime really that we had as an applicant, even just going through, even if we hadn't won, even kind of up to that stage, the amount of sort of exposure to anyone's a potential partner, aren't they, in that space, and having a platform to talk about our project, kind of have that out there, and just being able to spot opportunities for collaboration. That was sort of a huge thing for us, and sort of as I mentioned, we really kind of took that opportunity at the winners' dinner, and sort of we were kind of lucky in that we had a hackathon coming up, so I was able to say, hey, I've got an event in 2 months' time. I need inspirational speakers to come and talk to young people, who's in. And that was a really kind of great way then to keep connected to some of the really inspiring, a lot of them kind of young entrepreneurs, some from the youth element was great for us because it was obviously the Young Pioneers Award. So it was just great, really. I think I'm just, those things have sustained. We've been able to link up with, for example, TAP SOS, who are in Ireland. We've linked them up to our Youth Work Ireland partner. So there's, there've been kind of really lasting links, which have been genuinely valuable. So yeah, just really grateful.
Fantastic, thank you. And I must say that I think we've talked about technology and its impact. We're actually most nervous about the ability to reproduce that networking, actually. I think that's, we're all used to being, as we are now, standing in front of a single computer and talking to one or two people at a time. It's relatively straightforward, but we're trying to reproduce a position with the BT Tower. We had 90 people in a room, and they could actually, pretty much everybody could talk to everybody over the course of a few hours with some lunch and a bit of chat and whatever. That I still haven't seen that happening yet, and so I think that's going to be the toughest thing. And I suspect that's true generally for all of us. That social connection on a more casual basis, that the artificial nature of Zoom meetings when there's 8 people all listening to one person speak, just because you can't speak at the same time. All of those things is I think that's the next barrier for all of us, actually, in terms of technology. To give us that little bit more connection and networking. So we're working hard on that, but it'll be interesting to see how much we can keep it up. So thank you both for joining us. I think the Education Award is going to be an interesting one for all the reasons that you said. As you say, Charlotte, it may well be that we can't imagine an entry that doesn't talk to COVID as a very specific issue. But as ever, there's plenty of other issues around education and development and skills that we'd be interested in. We're very interested in the impact on communities and the nature of the learning, and the way that, for example, as Christina's talked about, changing the model for youth work is a really interesting change that we've seen. That's not the tech itself, but the way that it's impacted. And if you're hesitating about entering, please get over to the website, have a look at the forms. It's all about what you're doing. We make it open and easy and accessible. It's free to enter. That's true of all the categories. These new categories, just to remind you, is arts and culture, education and workplace inclusion. And we're looking for your ideas to how we can use technology to make the world a better place. So if you are hesitating, please get over there and get in. You've got until the 30th of June to enter. And I hope that today's stories have inspired you and given you a direct sense of direction about why you should put your name in the hat and try and win one of the awards. So thanks again to my guests. Thank you, Charlotte and Christina. Thank you to John and Deborah, and to Janine. And yes, we'll be back next week with more of the same. So thanks for joining us.